Okay. So the stream should be up and running now, I think. I had some issues with the not gonna have that audio on. I had some issues with the restream stuff not working with the stream I had sort of queued up. But it seems to be working now. But the old link was dead. Yep, good. So if you're watching on Twitch, your messages will appear on screen, same as before. On YouTube, I won't be able to see your messages. Or the people watching the stream won't be able to see your messages on the stream. I will still be able to see the messages in like the chat thing. Let's actually do that. Right. So today I'm planning on doing some more Notification stuff. What I want to do, I have two things I want to do today. One of them is supporting 9 patches and stuff as backgrounds for containers. So right now we have, if you have a look at this file, so this is our format, and this is a container, or as it's called in the code, a stack. And I kind of want to be able to, so I can give this a 9-patch background, I can give this a 9-patch background, but I kind of want to be able to give this whole thing a 9-patch background as well, or just a regular background, like solid color background. So I was gonna look into doing that. Also, we have this constraints system where constraints can currently just be numbers. I kind of want to be able to do something like this should be equal to icon 2, and that should make sure that this one and this one are the same, without having to specify these widths manually. I think that would be good. But before we get into that, I want to show off this. So Edefau, I'm not sure how he pronounces that nickname. He took Notification and made this thing. So this is a small pop-up. He's just using the background and border color, so there's no like 9-patch magic going on. The sort of shading here, that is probably done by his compositor. And yeah, so he pulls out a lot of information about the stuff that he's playing, and even the album art here. So that's really cool. And this is the kind of stuff that I really like with Notification, because this isn't something you would necessarily be able to do with like a normal free desktop notification system. So normally you would have stuff like you would be able to get like maybe the title and something, but you're really limited by what your notification system is able to show. So for example, some of them might not support images, or you might not be able to like put them below each other, and this one in a different color and all of that stuff. So it's really cool to see how sort of integrated into his system this looks. Oops, my mouse just ran out of battery, I think. No? Yeah. Just give me a sec. I have this super old mouse laptop combination thing, and it had rechargeable batteries once upon a time. It's this thing, old de novo Logitech thing, and it has rechargeable batteries, and you're meant to charge the mouse with these two pads here. So you're meant to like put it in a docking station, and that will turn off the mouse and charge it. But those don't seem to be working with the replacement batteries I have in them. Probably because they're different battery tech from what they were using when this was new back in the early 2000s. I think this thing came out in like 2006. It doesn't say. But yeah, so I just have like a battery recharging dock that just stays there and charges all my batteries. So I can change them on the fly. But yeah, I really like how he was able to fairly easily take his music playing application and make something that looks so integrated. Like it looks like this was generated by this program. It really sort of ties well into his aesthetic there. And this, just to show off, this is his script. It's a gist on GitHub. I'm probably gonna add something like this, a bit more generic, so like not his home directory. And I'm gonna probably make this into something more generic and put it in an example for Notifier. But what we have here, he just uses MPC as his music player. So it just like gets out the information, uses FFmpeg of all things to get the cover art. I'm not quite sure like when they built that into FFmpeg. And then it just runs Notifier with the information that he was like these, the information that he was grabbing from MPC and the cover art in this format here, and that seems to work really well, which I think is super cool. So yeah. So yeah, what I want, so basically I want to give him, what the hell was that? I think some snow just fell on my window. So basically what I want to do is I want to give him, and anyone using Notifier, the ability to, so for example, these three text items sort of exist together. And I want him to be able to say, well, give all of these the same, like a background image or color. And this is something I was sort of doing already. So if we just build this, and if we run Notifier with our config here, and let's all right, let's just set these colors. I was experimenting with something, so I made the text disappear, or I made it have the default color, which is white. So yeah, with this, and I was sort of doing this with like when I was debugging the layouting algorithm, I implemented this thing, and it's a super hacky way of doing it. You shouldn't do this. It was just to try something out. But basically what happens when we do this is that it now draws a different color for each part of the layout here. So you can see like this is an image, this is one, this sort of green stuff is one container. This like purplish stuff here is one container. And you can see the text elements here. So I kind of want to give the possibility of doing that. But to do that, you need to be able to name a stack. So if you look at the configuration here, like there's no way for me to reference this. So when I typically set a background or a color, I do something like this. Or on the command line, if I want to have a background, oops, let's just build that to turn off the colors. Isn't that doing? Oh, I forgot to hit enter. And then run it. Yeah. So now we don't have the colors anymore. And if I now want to have a background, for example, for the title, I do title.background and some color. Now it's red background color. The problem is, if you look at the format here, like now I'm referencing this title, there's no way for me to reference this thing. So I need to be able to name stacks somehow. And I was thinking, oops, let's look at the options here. So basically we need a way to be able to name a stack. Now, what we need to consider when doing this is that the way the parser works, it builds these before it adds them to a container. So if we look at this, it's a parser. Let's see where we are. Text, right? Yeah, so I added some error checking in here. So if we add in, oh wait, this is for the layout. Here's the parser. Yeah, element. So an element is an identifier followed by constraints. The problem is that if we have something that matches this, then this will happen and this will happen, even if we afterwards figure out that, oh no, that's not the case. Let's go back and like undo this in the parsing stage. This has still happened. So we need to be careful of side effects here. So for example, if we were to define a pattern that did something like this, and this is just a quirk of how npeg works. So if we do something like this, and if we said, well, I want this to be my text stack equals this, for example, then this would be first parsed as an element, right? So this would be seen as an element, and then it would see this and be like, ooh, but I'm not allowed to have an equal sign after an element, so this can't be an element after all. And I'll track back to here, and I'll check the option, which would be like an equality. So we need to make sure that if we do this pattern, that this, like the stack with a label, is sort of the first choice. So if it can't do that, then it will fall back, then it will parse it as an element, but not before. Oops. So if we look in our stack here is our definition of a stack, which is a horizontal or a vertical stack implied, followed by one or more spaces. So that's just the definition of our stack here. We also have, so horizontal is an outer horizontal followed by constraints. Same with the vertical, it's just an outer vertical followed by constraints. And the reason why I have outer horizontal and that those are separate things is because I didn't want to be able to give constraints on the top level stack. So I can't say if you look at this again and at this format, this format right here. So if we look at this, I will be able to, so I can say that this is 20%, for example. And that's actually cut the text somehow. Interesting. Not quite sure. Oh, right, because it has a set width. The width of this is set. It's defined, like it can't change. So when I say that it's supposed to be 30% of the whole of the body of the whole notification, then well, this is the only thing that can shrink. That's a bit weird, but sure. But I can't add one to this container. Oh. Oh. That's unfortunate. I didn't think about that. So, what adding 9 patches does is that it basically just rewrites the pattern. So it adds like hard constraints on what's around your pattern, and then it passes it on to the layouter. But that means that this thing has this thing is no longer the outermost container. So the rule that we can't have these on the outermost container now only applies when we're not using 9 patches. That's not good. Yeah, but we'll look into that. I'll fix that some other time. Anyways, yeah, so the stack, horizontal or vertical, followed by spaces. Outer is the start of a horizontal, followed by children, followed by the stop of a horizontal. And these are just like the round, like the normal parentheses and the square brackets. Yeah, so this is the rule that actually adds something. So I think we want to put it in here. And I think we want to do an optional capture of identifier followed by an equals, literal equals sign, followed by that. Which means that this is no longer the case. If capture length is larger than 1. Because we're not right. That's a bad idea. So we have to capture this anyways. Like always capture this part, even though it's optional. If it's larger than 2, then add this, add the constraint. And if Oh, and this must be 2. So if $1, if the length of this is not 0 or is greater than 0, that means we now have an identifier for our stack. Let's just try to output that and check that it works. So this is a horizontal stack. We don't really have any horizontal stacks, so let's do this. Create a horizontal stack there. Error at. Oh, and we need to build this, of course. There. Stack should be known as test. And you will see that I have 3 of them. That might look like an error, but that's just because I have 3 monitors and it shows up on all of them. So if I limit this to run on DP2, which would be the monitor that I'm streaming, then you can see it only shows 1 time. The reason why it parses it 3 times, or is because the parsing is called from parse layout, which parses the format, but also does all of the like solving thing. Which is like I could theoretically parse this, like run this parse function and then pass the result of this into the different things, but yeah. I mean, the parsing is so fast anyways. Let's see. So that, yeah, that shouldn't be causing any issues for us, I don't think. By the way, what do you guys think of the audio quality? I see there's 1 person watching on Twitch. I don't think there's anyone watching on live chat. Wait. Yeah, no, there's no one watching on YouTube. I'm not sure. So people seem to have stopped watching for some reason. It might just be that I'm now streaming on a Sunday, whereas earlier I've been streaming during the week. But I don't know. Anyways, yeah, I did some modifications to my audio. Big thanks to Zoom on IRC, who helped me out with that. So hopefully the audio should sound better now, and the recordings that are on YouTube shouldn't be as muted, because they tended to mute the video. Like they tried to normalize all of the audio, I think, and I had some spikes somewhere, and that meant it muted the whole thing. Like not muted, but it turned the volume way down. But this should have fixed that. So stacks now also need to have a name. Spacers can't have names yet. Let's just call this stack name. There's a weird quirk in them. You can't have the same variable named the same across these off branches in a type. It's a bit annoying. Like I can't do this because it's now redefined. Stack name. There we go. And this should basically do the same thing as this. Oops. Not PPS there. Dot stack name equals this. Good. Now let's just add the same rule to the verticals as well. Oops. That was one too far. Let's see. Try again. There we go. Paste that there. Yeah, that should be right. So now these stacks have names assigned to them. And that means, let's see. So where do these get turned into identifiers? Ah, they don't. It's the other way around. So like here, no, like down here, there's the rule that says like if text has the key for the node and the layout that we're currently doing, then do this stuff and like grab the width and height that is determined by the text that you input. So, but we can already by the options. What happens if we specify a 9 patch? How is that working again? Is that a separate? Right. Let's use this weird global or local thing. Options of backgrounds. I'm gonna put right, okay. So right, so it has a string. Yeah, it has a thing for a table from a string to a background. And here we are reading that out and saying if the backgrounds has the element name and the window.hover section.element element name, but this is in the for each element loop, which if you go to the definition, will only run. So this nim template, basically they do AST substitution. They're kind of similar to macros in C, but with AST instead of just pure text. So basically this body untyped here means that this can be whatever code we want. And for example, these variables here that I defined with inject, I basically tell them that code blocks from outside should be able to see these variables. So if we look at where I was calling this, like I call it with the start and stop, and I'm using X here, X and Y, which I haven't defined anywhere down here. They're defined by this loop. So if we do this, it might, yeah, this shows me that this X variable is defined inside of this template. So yeah, and as you can see, we're only doing this when we have body elements. But as I said, we have this draw stack thing that I hacked together just to show me where the stacks went. So when declared draw stack, we so we do this for every element, not only those that have the kind element. I'm kind of overloading the word element here in a not too great way. But basically this goes through the entire stack and runs this body whenever there's an element, but not when there's a stack. Which is kind of unfortunate, because now we want to do something with stacks. So, how do we want to solve this? I guess what we could do is pass in a separate body here for stuff we want to do with a stack. I mean, the for each element doesn't quite make sense anymore, but well, it does in our overloaded sense of the word element. So let's call this element body, and let's make a stack body, which is untyped, but I want this to have a default value, which I'm just gonna say is an empty thing. And let's do that before so this is a recursive thing that goes down the whole stack, and we want to do this drawing before we recurse down into stuff, because we want to draw this as the background on which to draw stuff onto. So we want to do this here, the stack body. So if we don't pass this, it's just going to be an empty list of statements, so it's not going to do anything. Element here does the body thing. That happens anyway, so that's good. Right. That shouldn't. Oh, and this is of course now called element body. Seems to be giving us some issue up here. Recursive module dependency. Let's try to do this. What? So new statement list is from the macros package. I'm not quite sure. Wait, do I not import macros? Oh, I don't. Right. Let's add it there. Good. That should have fixed that. Now we have a different error. It's of type nym node. What? I am using it. I'm assigning it to this value. So type nym node has to be used or discarded. Or this use, it's used, it's assigned to this thing. And then used down here. Oh. Right. I think this is now assigned to a statement for creating this. Let's try this instead. Oops. Nope. Okay, you know what? Let's just make it required for now. And I'll go back and have a look at that afterwards. That means this one, so this is how we calculate when we hover over stuff that we can later click. It uses the same iterator. So we just need to add a secondary branch to this one. So this is how you can pass multiple branches to the same template or macro in them. You use this do notation. So for each element, then colon to do a block, then this, and then do, and that is another one. I'm actually not using Nimdo or DVM on this machine. I am using Nimdo on my work machine. I still haven't gotten around to setting it up on this machine. So this machine runs i3 at the moment. So it's just plain i3 with an i3 bar on this one. So yeah, this is the other one for each element. This also needs to have a secondary block, and this will now happen for every stack. Right. Good. So that happens for every stack. And what we do here, we inject X and Y, and we also inject the element itself. So here we can do if element.name has a length of more than 0. So if we have any characters in the name, then we want to check if that name exists in the backgrounds, and if it does, then we want to draw that background on the screen. Oops. So let's do this. Just copying the code here for normal backgrounds. There. So if arguments, if it has the element name, and we know hover section, yeah, so we can't hover. You know what, we should add that as well, but I haven't at the moment. So let's not remove that, let's just comment this out. Like so. Set it to the context, load the background patch. Yeah, draw that patch on there. Width and height. Where do these come from? It's not. Yeah, otherwise, grab the color and draw the color. Where does this width and height thing come from? They're not in here. Right, so they're from here. So let's just grab that. You know what? Let's grab this and let's move it out of this whole thing and into this part. Not there though. We need to add them here, and we need to inject these as well, because every element has a width and a height. So we'll just inject those for the blocks. When does it say that it's unused? It's not unused, it's used down here a lot. Okay, let's run this and see if it works. Or at least if it compiles. Yeah, compiles fine. And run this. Name is not accessible. Right. So it's now complaining that this thing doesn't have name when it's a stack, and that's true because it's called a stack name. So down here, this is not element.name. So just sure that I get all of them. Element of name, replace that with element.stack name, like that. And now that should compile fine and run fine. Good. So now we're naming this stack test. If we now try to give it a background, a 9 patch, and I have some 9 patches available here. I have this bubble, I have this one, and I have this one. What is this one again? I think this is a pretty basic one. Yeah. So let's try to use that one. And we're gonna say that test.9patch is this test9.png. That didn't seem to work. Let's just make sure that I have this right. That didn't work either. Does this have to be before? Title.9patch. Test.9.png. That didn't work either. Is it only doing these? Let's set an action for this. Okay, so that's not the case. Why does that not work anymore? Or am I doing something wrong? In that case, I should. So even if it does work, and I'm just using it wrong, that should still be an error message. Right. So I can do hover and hover.9patch. Does that work? Let's test. Hover 9patch. Right. So hover 9patches works, but not normal 9 patches. That's not good. Okay. Just highlight the word 9 patch so I can find this. Identifier. Let's just not do this because that's just confusing. So if you have a capture length of 2, that means we have captured this thing and this thing, which means that we have identifier as capture 1 and this string as number 2. So if it's 2, then options.9patch. Oh, sorry. If it's 2, then we only have this capture. Otherwise, it's 3 because we always have 1 capture, and that's the whole thing. So yeah, we're capturing the string, and we're setting that as the options 9 patch. That is just like the background 9 patch. Otherwise, we're adding it to this backgrounds table with the identifier. And this code checks that if the arguments of backgrounds has the key of the element name and the currently hovered thing is not our thing, then we set that if background patches dot has key. So background patches is for element background in args.backgrounds. Background 9 patch length is not 0. Load it. Check that it's loading the right thing. And then set that there. Let's echo out here. Loaded 9 patch for our element. Just make sure that that is it's loaded and working. Oh, Yeah, not that one. Here. Wait, have we done something dumb here? We're drawing the 9 patch. Okay, so let's just check that it loads it. Oh, now we have this. Oh, wait, what? Wait, now it works. But what the hell? I didn't change anything. That's disconcerting. It doesn't seem to be random. Okay. The only thing I really changed was adding this echo statement here. And that really shouldn't have changed anything. Am I going mad? Was it working the whole time? Wait, did I change anything else? Right. No, I didn't. What? That is trippy. Okay, so I didn't change anything and now it works. Not sure I like that. Okay, so let's try now for test. That doesn't work. Okay. So at least I'm not completely insane. Actually, let's add back in that echo statement. Yeah, so it loaded 9 patch for test, which is good because that's what we called our stack. And we have given it a 9 patch now. Okay. Here. So our stack has a name. Stack has a name. And it should have a background. And it should be a 9 patch. So all of those should echo something out for us now. Oh. Right. So it's stack the equal sign. We messed up our capture here. You remember I moved this equal signs, or I moved this capture outside of the group because I couldn't have two optional group captures and tell them apart. I mean, I could because one starts with S and one doesn't. But I'm just gonna do this and say every character except for the last one is now the name of that stack. There. So that now works. So now we can have 9 patch backgrounds for our stacks. What does this actually applying these do though? Well, like how is it drawing them? Let's try to apply it to this. Oh, I only fixed I only fixed it for the horizontal ones, not the vertical ones. There we go. Oops. There we go. There, okay. It seems to draw it outside of all the contents of the stack. That is good, that's what I want. Okay, so now that works. But I think I have found an issue here. So basically the way that we're determining, so we first check, do we have a background with the element name? That means that in our backgrounds, we have this background object, which has a color, a 9-patch, and a 9-patch tile. But in this code right here, we say, do we have a background with the name of our element? And then we say, have we loaded a patch by this element name? In that case, draw it, otherwise draw a color. So if I did something like, say, I want title to have a red background, right? And I want title to have an action of hello. So now I can click it, and you see it also changes color because the default hover is a gray color. But I want the hover to be a 9-patch, so I say title.hover.9patch is test.9.png. And that worked. I thought that would have failed because now it has it loaded. What? Wait, what the hell happened now? Okay, now my editor has messed up completely here. There, I think. You know what? Don't just get me out of there. Okay, this looks good. There. Background patches. Oh, background patches is a different. Right, we have a separate one for hover patches. Right. Okay, so that does work. We can't name a stack the same thing. Like this would do some weird stuff. Yeah. That's sort of, you're asking for trouble at that point. So I'm not too worried about that. So I did add in this error here that error with blah 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 text. An image with a given name already exists. When I try to add a text, And I have the same thing for images, just the other way, a text with a given name. So I should add a check here as well for a stack already exists with that name. But I can do that later. Right. So let's not call that title. Let's call it test. And let's just not give it an action and a color or anything like that. Okay. So now this is called test. So we can say test.9patch is test.9.png, and it now has background. I kind of want to also give it the ability to hover. So I want to be able to say test.action, something like this. And as you can see, it allows me to, where is that echo coming from? What was the message? Stack named test. Stack named. Is it in here? No. In here? No. Is that just an old... Right, there's an old build. Let's rebuild. Just get rid of that echo message. Yeah, so basically I want to be able to also, like, to make an entire stack clickable. And this is, like, the reason I want this is because I want to be able to create buttons with, like, an icon and some text. So let's have a look at how that works right now. So the way it works is that we have, we're using this for each element. Yeah, we have this calculate hover section. So basically every time we move the mouse, we update the hover section, then we calculate the hover section, and we update the hover section again. And the reason we do this, like update hover section, just adds these imlib updates. That is just to make sure that we add the correct damage to imlib, so that it will redraw the correct area. So we do that, like we say, oh, now we need to redraw what we were currently hovering, and then we update to check if we have done something with our hover, and then we say, okay, add damages for the new hover as well. This could be conditional to save us some drawing, but we're not doing that right now. Yeah, so we reset the hover section, then for each element, so this is the same thing that we did before, get or default the action and the color. If action is not blank, I'm actually going to change this to action.length is greater than 0, and we're in the rectangle made by this, then set the hover section to this thing. So basically we want to do the exact same thing, but with stack name instead of name. So, and this is a nice thing in Nim. Normally, like, it would be hard to do this in another language. Well, I guess not. You could make a function that took in this as a string. But what we're gonna do here, we're gonna make a template. We are gonna say just check element and name untyped. Untyped. Give it this thing. So now this name here is going to be taken from here. So that is the field name. So for each element, we're going to check the element for the name field. And for our stacks, we don't do the discard anymore. Here we check for the stack name. So this basically creates a copy of all of this code in this block and in this block. But in this block, we replace this name here with name. And in this block, we replace all of these instances of name here with stack name. What that does is that it allows us to have this template look at different fields without having to copy all of this code. Now I'm not sure if this just is going to work out of the box. It might. Oh, that's really nice. Okay, so that works. I should be able to click it, and I can. So now we can hover and click on stacks of things, not just the things themselves. That means that we now have hover sections. For stacks, this means that we need to be able to draw some stuff. Yeah, so we removed this. Yeah, so this is the code that draws the hover section, and it should draw the hover 9 patches. So I should also be able to say test.hover.9patch is not equal to, but is test.9.png. So now when I hover it, it should use the 9 patch image that we had before, because all of that drawing happens independently of this. But if I now set a background for this, just set it to a solid color, then it's going to draw that color on top. And that is what this thing that we commented out earlier was doing for us. This checks that the element that we're currently hovering is not the element that we're looking at. So we're gonna rebuild, and that should have fixed that bug. So now when I hover over it, it should change to the 9 patch instead of drawing them both at the same time. There we go. And I can click them. So this allows us to do like the classical like button with an icon. So button with icon and text. Good. Right. That is nice. So that was the one feature I wanted to add. Being able to add colors and actions and 9 patches and all of that to stacks. So be able to name a stack and be able to give them sort of all of the same things that we could give to elements. Right. The second thing I wanted to add was for constraints to, so I want this to be the same size as icon, right? This is currently an error in the parser. This layout parser, because we require numbers for our constraints. So if we look at the rule for constraint, constraint is either greater than or smaller than, followed by a positive number, and then by an optional percentage. So we want to do either all of that, or we want an element. And currently our constraints. Oh yeah, before we carry on. So some of you might have noticed I have a bunch of these images here of bar, whatever. So bar 1 through 10. And these are just simple, like a simple filling bar. And I was using that to make this sound thing. So if we run Notifier with the sound config, it looks like that. Just a small like sound icon with a bar, and I can pass in I think it's bar.image. I think I called it bar. So if you are at about 70%, you can do that. About 40%. So as you can see, the default was this one, and all the way up to 100%. So that the idea was to add that as just like sound up, sound down kind of thing to my system. Now this machine uses like has this sound mixer thing. That was actually not the one I was. Yeah. So here we have, here it does these as hotkeys, and has like external mixer, and it runs notifications through either libnotify, which is using right now, or as a GTK pop-up window, which looks like this, like in the middle of the screen. It's kind of white on white, yeah, like that. And through my Dunst. But on my machine at work, I have these hotkeys just set as commands to polls in my i3 configuration. And I'm suspecting that many have the same kind of thing. So there I have something like turn the volume down by 5% and run this notify send thing. So something like sound at, and then it pulls the percentage from somewhere. So it gives me something like this, obviously with a different program name and stuff like that, but that's the idea. So my plan was to replace that with this. Oops. Replace that with this, so that it would show these instead of these. I could also grab these, so I could use Notificatcher, grab these notifications, and show them with Notifier instead of with Dunst, which is kind of what I plan on doing for the entire system. So basically write my own like notification center thing that uses Notificatcher to catch the notifications and Notifier to show them. And then it has some logic in between, which is just a simple script that reads the output of Notificatcher, or actually gets run by Notificatcher, and then decides which configuration and whatever else it might need for that given notification. And it will also be able to do stuff like, so right now I have this set to just bottom corner. I could do stuff the same way that Dunst can place multiple notifications below each other. So if I do this, they sort of get shown one above the other. I could do a similar thing with Notifier. But it also made me think, like this thing, that maybe actions should have a format. So currently actions are just a string, and that string is just written out to the terminal. But in theory, that could be a format string, and I could do stuff like get the position that you clicked as parameters you could pass on your action, which means that you could bring up something like this, and I could click somewhere on this bar, and it could say, well, okay, I'm gonna set the volume to that level that you specified. But that's something for another day, I think. That's just the level of stuff that I want to add to Notifier. So yeah, back to this stuff. So constraint has a comparator, it has a value and a percentage, and we add those right here, constraints to an element. So basically, I think I want to have a constraint kind as an enum and either have it as value or element. And comparator, I need to keep that because I want to do the same, like bigger than, smaller than kind of logic. But I also want case of kind like that to be the constraint kind. This doesn't have to be exported because we're not gonna look at those anywhere else than right here. Of value, then we do these two fields. If it's an element, then we just store the element name. Oh, we already have something called element. I'm just gonna call that relative then, because it's a relative to a different element. Actually, you know what? I think we might want percentages though. Like, yeah, this should be 50% of another thing. So let's keep percentage out of it. Just have value or element there. Down here, constraints should now be either a positive number or an identifier, which means that we do this. Oops. There. Where was I? Here. So again, since we have a optional capture here, we can't do two of them, or we can, but then it's sort of hard to tell which is which. So either a positive number or an identifier. And as I said, we keep the percentage here. So we do try parseInt except value error, I think is the parsing error. Ooh, we can't do that. So we need to do this, and we need our constraint you know what, let's do this. Try parseInt, place that down there. I was trying to avoid having to do this twice, but I think this is actually easier. And this is kind of value, and just let the value be equal to this. And here, let's say value is equal to value. What, did these not have commas on them? How does that work? If it's a value error, so if it's not able to parse, so this will throw the parse exception then it drops down here, which means that it is relative and that element should be able to should be equal to $2, right? Now, so now this won't throw an error anymore. Let's just rebuild. Oh, come on, there we go. Then we'll build, that's fine, and then we should be able to run our previous test that failed, which is this one. So this shouldn't give us a parsing error. It still won't do what we wanted to. Yeah, so this is what I expected. Unhandled exception value is not accessible using discriminant kind of type constraint. That is exactly what I expected. Because here we have a constraint. It says if it's a percentage, then look at the comparator, and then try to add the constraint value here. So what we now, so we can't reach value when our constraint is not a value constraint, but it's a relative constraint. So here we want to grab the element instead, and we want to grab the orientation for that element. Is that something we're actually able to get? You know what? We might not be able to, by the way this is set up. Because we don't have a global list of packs, so we can't get the width and height within a pack. That's not great. Oops. So what this returns a parse state. And the parse state we grab, or here we set up a parse state with a stack, and then we run the matcher. The reason it needs a stack here is that elements must be added to a stack and stacks must be added to a stack. So you just create a dummy stack here, and then we make sure that nothing has sort of messed up, and then we just grab the one and only stack that was added as a child to this stack. But this parse state could theoretically right, yeah, so it has a table of constraints, and this is only used during execution or during parsing. So that's what allows us to do this thing, parse state.constraint, and grab the constraint out of here, because this constraint parsing rule just adds it to this table, and then we grab it out of the table in whatever like upper rule that we're in, because it can happen across multiple different rules. So basically we want to add all of the names, so this, and element names, we want to add those to a list in parse state. And we don't want this to be, we want this still to be just a string name, because we can reference one that we haven't seen yet. But then we need to, when we parse the layout here, this parse thing needs to return two things then, not just the pack, but also grab, so instead of just grabbing this one, it needs to also grab the table from parse state with all the different elements. And then it needs to pass that in down here to add stack. Not just, yeah, okay, so yeah, it just passes that along into add stack. It no longer only gets a pack there, it gets two things, a pack and a table. And then all of these little p's need to be replaced with something. All right, we can make that a top level thing. And then this can be rewritten to grab the right constraint. Right. So, parse state. Just grab all the elements. This is actually a pack. Like an element is also a pack. It's horrible naming scheme. But that's the way it works. Parse state, this parser here now returns a tuple with the pack and all the elements, which is a table to string, or from string to pack. Packs are ref objects, right? Yeah, good. Just so that we don't copy objects unnecessarily around. Right, so here we need to return this and this. Type expected, but God, that's right. Probably didn't like my use of these here. So tuple, that should work. There we go. And yeah, this result of parse layout. Right, so this is now the parse state, pass in parse state here. And I'm gonna set result to be parse state dot pack. And this add stack now need to take, let me create an alias for this. What can we call this? Let's parse tuple, sure. Go up here and say parse tuple is equal to this thing. You know what? This is kind of a roundabout way of doing it. What does this parse function really do for us? Yeah, you know what? Let's not do this. Not that tuple, not this, not any of this. Remove this thing. No, I want to keep that change. Here I'm gonna return a parse state. This is just gonna return parse state. Is not gonna get that. We are gonna define a template just called template base pack, which takes a parse state and returns a pack, and that's going to do this thing. Not return, that's just going to do this. And now down here, result, that's not result, that is parse state, and result is parse state dot base pack, and this add stack is also going to take the parse state in there. Okay, this takes in a parse stack ps, and we say here that p is parse state dot base pack, oops, this is parse state, not parse stack. There, add stack child, right. So here I need to create a dummy parse state is a parse state where the base pack, actually let's do this, is a parse state, and then dummy parse state dot base pack is equal to child, and actually let this be parse state, and let's define, so this is a thing in nim, call it state. This is the thing in nim that this is now only an accessor, because the thing we're looking for here isn't the brackets is just an accessor. If you want accessor equals, that's a different operator. So here we're going to say base pack equals, and this of course needs to be a base pack. It doesn't return anything. It's equal to base. So that's how you can do accessors in nim. This of course now is the dummy parse state. There we go. No more errors, that's good. Just try to build. We haven't fixed anything yet, but this should build. This should crash with the same error. And if we change back this to 32, it should all work like it did before. Good. But the big change now is that we have a parse state and not a pack passed in here. So we can do, if constraint of percentage, add a constraint. So this whole thing only applies when it's the value. So if constraint dot kind is value, actually no. Case and off value, then do all of this. Else, no, off relative. Then we need to do all of this again, but not with value. Here we need to do something similar to what we're doing here. And this is parent dimension. Yeah, grab this. Let that dimension is equal, oh, not dimension, constraint dimension, and here we need to get our element, ps dot elements. This is our constraint dot element, I think. PS elements, constraint element. This is now horrible multi-line tertiary, kind of unreadable, but that's fine. I'm gonna just split this in multiple lines to make it slightly more readable. There. So all of these should be not constraint value float. These should be constraint dimension. I believe. There we go. Same for these. I'm gonna go back and clean this up because now we have a dry violation here again. Again, dry is do not repeat yourself. And now we basically just copied a massive block of logic just to change a couple small variables here. Right. So we can't add, or we can't combine two dimensions like this. Let's just try and see if this works before we go any further. Just keeping in mind that those percentages doesn't work yet. So let's rebuild. And run this. Ooh, unable to satisfy constraint. Value is not accessible. Oh. To format language. Oh, right. So it wasn't able to satisfy some constraint, and when trying to show me what that constraint was, it runs the to format language, and that expects all of these to have values, which of course is not the case anymore. So let's, if constraint.kind is equal to value, then do this. Otherwise, grab the constraint.element. Just add a little ternary in there. Run this. Aha. Unable to satisfy constraint icon to icon. Maybe we could have guessed that that was the one. So that is this unable to satisfy constraint. if we just remove that, we'll be able to see exactly which line of code, which isn't really all that useful to your average user, which is why that information is not shown in that message. Oh, and the actual error is a key not found. And the reason it's a key not found is that we don't actually add anything. So this whole nice table of packs is we never put anything in there. So we, just to test this out, we really only need images because that's what we were doing. So element here, new element. We also need to do parse state dot elements. This is a $1, which is the name. It's equal to the element. And that should add that key that we couldn't find. That our message is gone. But the key that we couldn't find, and there we go. Now that works. Great, so that is for elements. We need to do the same up here for our named stacks. So if we have a stack with a name, we need to do this same thing. Let's actually just make a variable out of that. Set this equal to name. Set the name here to be equal to the parse state dot stack dot last dot children dot last. There. Oops. Just grab this to there. This is again also a dry violation. Verticals and horizontals run the exact same code. So I'm gonna grab all of this and we're gonna say handle stack. Create a template up here, handle stack, untyped with all the code from there. Oops, that was one too many. And we're going to remove all of this code and just put handle stack in there as well. That's just a small refactor to avoid doing that. Right, so now the interesting thing is that we should be able to, let's see, let's create a new stack here. And we're gonna, can I add, oops, they're too small. There, so now we have two stacks here. You've got mail, you've got mail. They just have the same content. One has a bit of like padding and stuff. The other one doesn't. Or it has padding, but only like, now it's center aligned. But I want this to be 100. I want this to be the same size as test. Key not found 2. Why is it looking for a 2? That's a bit strange. I'll look here. Right. Templates are kind of odd within MPEG because MPEG rewrites these based on what it can see in here, and it can't see these when they're behind a call. But I found a way around that, and that is to access the captures variable or something like that. Capture, right? Capture.length and capture1. So what we want to do here is capture1.length and capture1 and capture here capture2. So though these variables are sort of injected the same way. What? What earth is this complaining about? It gets a capture. Oh, .s, of course. So we just need to get the string value out from the capture, because the capture has some other stuff with it that we're not interested in. There we go. Building that. There. Now they are defined to be equal in size. Of course, they were already equal in size, so that doesn't really help us much. And since we can't do, like, we can't do the whole other thing, but let's try to just add a smaller text here. So that small.text is hello. That disappeared for some reason. Oh, that's because the text color defaults to white. Color no 00000, so it's black. And now we can say that small should be equal in size to test. Yay! Now we can see this one is now equal in size to this one. That seems to have cut this for some reason. Yeah, here's you've got male, but here it says you got ma, and this seems to cap it here. So that's not great. That is probably some weird logic issue. That's some weird logic issue in the constraint solving thing, I'm guessing. Where these that is actually a bit weird, because so this an element with texts should be dimension should be equal to dimension value, which is either width or height, and that is a 100% set constraint. Only if constraints are 0, but they are in this case. But we add this like default spacer, but it just wants to be the other dimension. Right, yeah, this is just the height thing. Wait. Yeah, I say that I need to be this big. And then the other dimension can have some extra space. But it tries to be 0. Right. So I need to add a constraint here. So the thing is that it has a constraint that it wants to be 0, but that has a strength, and the dimension of this plus the spacer needs to be equal to the dimension of our container. No, so the width of the text plus the size of the spacer needs to be our dimension. And the spacer always tries to be 0. But this doesn't prevent it from being smaller than 0. So we need to add an actual hard constraint that dummy spacer must be larger or equal to 0. Because right now we just say that it wants to be a 0. It can be bigger, but it can also be smaller. But now we say it can only be larger or equal to 0. That works. Great, okay. So now we can say that the small one should equal to test in size. And now test can be any size, and the small one will always be the same size. So the one thing that we're missing now is these percentages. And how can we do those if we can't combine variables? I guess we can make a variable. You can add a variable. No. We might not be able to do percentages just because of the way the constraint solving thing works. So here it takes the literal value that we pass in. So that would be like the number 32. Or in this case, it's a percentage. So it says something, like some number divided by 100. So this is still just a number. So this times that must be equal to the dimension. We can't add a value to or a variable to, we can't time a variable by a variable. But expected when a variable, yeah, coefficient float. So we aren't able to do this. And this is also, we can't just like move it over to the other side. Okay, so we might not be able to support this case right there, which is kind of a shame, because I kind of wanted to be able to do like, oh, but we allow this. That doesn't make any sense. So what I wanted to do was to do like something like 50% of test. Now it's 50%, and that test is a separate element, or a new element. It exists twice somehow. So yeah, we're only able to do them equal to stuff. I mean, I guess that's fine. It's better than nothing. It's not perfect, but it's better than nothing. At least you can do like they're equal in size rules. Like if you want a 50-50 split, stuff like that. Or if you... So this is something I had for the notifications from Twitch, which was kind of annoying. It didn't... it wasn't able to do the whole... Like, since I create multiple... I have 2 columns, but I wasn't able to say this one should be equal in size to that one. So the columns were different size, which was kind of annoying. But that, like, this would have fixed that issue. But we're gonna then just do this. And we're gonna, in our relative here, we're gonna move percentage into the value like that. And we're gonna have a look here when we create this. Percentage never happens for these. That is strictly for these ones. And that means that this should not be able to be followed by a percentage. That should only happen in here. So positive number followed by an optional percentage or an identifier. And this is the only time I grab this 3. So this should be safe still. Oops. Run nimble. See what we get. There, that works. We're now not able to add a percentage onto there. It's good, but we can say stuff like 40%. Ooh, key not found. Interesting. And stack 286. So that ends up relative. That constraint somehow ended up relative because it tried to parse the int 2, which now is this whole thing and not just the positive number. So we need to capture this and this separately. They should both be number 2, so that should work. And this should work. And this should not, or yeah, that should not work. Okay. So that seems to be good. Okay. Yeah, that was, I think that was pretty much it for what I wanted to do for the stream. So we added in, it was a nice, almost exactly 2-hour long stream as well. So yeah, we added in the ability to have line patches and hovers and actions for backgrounds, or for stacks, not just for elements. we are now able to label them, give them names, and we're able to say that stuff should be the same as other stuff. Of course, I've only showed it on stacks so far, but we can, of course, do it for different things as well. So we can do something like this and say that, test sure, and say that title should be equal to body, and that should now be equal to this, but this is allowed to have some extra space. That should be fine. I'm not too worried about that. And what happens if I say that this is same size as icon? In general, these are kind of broken now because of this alignment thing. But I mean, it doesn't really make much sense to say that. If I do something like this, oh right, that's in height. Right. But if I add it to something like this, then it's wide. Right. That is sort of doing what I expect it to. If you say it's larger or equal to icon, that's also what I expect. This, I kind of expect an error. Yeah. Oh, percentage. Right, so this... container too small for constraints. That was, again, an error in the format language. If constraint dot kind equals value and come on, then we'll build. Run this. It should now, container too small for constraints, which is a weird error message, but at least it shows me what the problem is. Okay, so that was it for the stream today. I hope the audio sounds better than it has. It should have. And have a good night or morning or whatever the time is where you live.